Oh my god, I'm so tired. I just fucking finished the script. Gameplay footage has been recorded. It's fucking 3 a.m. in the morning. What the hell am I doing? Ugh. Alright, let's get this show on the road. Hello, I'm Peter, and welcome to a Tekken 7 guide on Bryan Fury. On my last Bryan video, in case you missed it, it's right here. Boink! I covered his gameplay triangle, control, counter hitting, pressure, all tied together with movement. Now, today we'll be diving deeper into the rabbit hole of space control and look at all the different moves and when and how to fluidly transition between them. Now, let's review the tools first, and then I'll explain how they are paired together. So, to the good stuff. Space control tools. I will be discussing the use of these moves at range 2 and 1.5. They can be used up close at range 1 or 0, but they're best, in my opinion, used at range 2 and 1.5. As a quick note, the whole purpose here of space control is to play to our strengths, give us time to think, allow us to have room to whiff punish, and slowly work our opponents towards the wall, where their movement will become limited. 3+4 and Mach Punch are going to be great tools for shoving our opponents towards the wall, so keep this in mind. 3+4. This is the backbone of our space control. It is one of the best space control tools in the game because it hits mid and starts up reasonably quick. Throwing this attack out protects range 2, and on block buys us even more space. If at range 2 and we're not sure what to do, this is our go-to move. Use this attack liberally, but do ensure that it doesn't whiff. It's very whiff punishable. 4-4-2 Mach Punch. Use this when your opponent is overly aggressive. If they use mid attacks such as down forward 1, down forward 2, Mach Punch will blow right past through that shit. On block has considerable pushback, so don't worry too much about being punished. Aside from about like 3 or 4 characters, there's not that many characters that are going to be punishing you on this. Mach Punch is a high though, so if it is ducked, we could eat a while standing launcher. If we're not sure about our opponent being aggressive on us, consider sticking to 3+4. Up or up forward 4. Orbital Heal. Now, if our opponent is using annoying lows or dick jabs, toss this out. Orbital Heal evades those attacks and nets us a nice launcher in the process. Whiffing this attack at range 2 or 3 is fairly risk-free and can be even a viable strategy to bait our opponent to rush in due to its degenerate properties. It has deceptive range. It has short whiff recovery and a long active window. By the time Bryan lands, there's hardly any time really to punish him. You have to be quick. Forward 4-4 Mach Kick. Bryan is weak to his left side, so the opponent may perpetually try to sidestep right or sidewalk right. In this case, Mach Kick will catch them in the act. Like 3+4 and Mach Punch, this attack covers range 2 very well, but does not provide any pushback. After Mach Kick, we generally don't want to press any buttons because we are at -10 with no pushback. Like Mach Punch though, this attack can be ducked and launch punished, so we don't throw this out needlessly unless we see that our opponents are constantly moving laterally. And the last tool we're going to talk about is full crouch down forward 4 Northern Cross at range 1.5 if our opponent is abusing high attacks. Northern Cross is our best friend here. Northern Cross covers space fairly well and crushes high attacks. As a bonus though, Northern Cross tracks pretty well at range 1.5 and below, even though it's not listed as a homing attack, so we can check opponents who are sidestepping at that range. Alright, I know that was kind of quick covering the space control tools, but most of this has already been covered in the Bryan 101 Fundamentals video. I wanted this just to be a quick refresher. Now, we've talked about these 5 main control tools, right? We're going to take a deeper look now at specifically 3+4, Mach Punch, and Orbital Heal, how these moves can be paired with other moves to deal with numerous situations. I want to look at Bryan's attacks in pairs because in the following section, the strengths of moves, in my opinion, are not only how powerful they are on their own, but also how well they work with other moves, right? Now, putting this into practice, this next section, putting it into practice is going to be much harder than it seems because it will require you to play proactively and thinking and reading your opponent on the fly. So this is a skill that you're gonna have to develop over time. So don't get frustrated in the beginning if you're like, this is too much to take in. It's just gonna take time. Space control to space control, or you can think of it as keep out to keep out, is good against aggressive opponents. And we're going to look at examples of how to deal with aggressive opponents using space control to space control. And what I mean by this is following up a space control tool such as 3+4, Mach Punch, and Whiffed Orbital Heal with another space control tool. Now, this game plan should be applied to matchups where you want to keep your opponent out. So characters such as Steve, Law, Shaheen, Nina, all the characters who are great at range 0 and 1. It is also especially good at catching impatient opponents, so you can use that there. And we're going to examine the next few moves as follow-up moves to 3+4, Mach Punch, and Whiffed Orbital Heal. I can't stress that enough. Spacing here is going to be crucial. 3+4 follow-up. Alright. This is predominantly used against opponents who are dashing in with 15 frame moves or slower. So if your opponent, after you throw out a keep out tool that we mentioned before, dashes in with a 15 frame move or slower, or say for instance they hesitate and then dash in, it will most likely be caught by a 3+4. At lower levels of play, this is hilarious as lots of players run into this, right? You throw out a 3+4, they block it, they dash in, they eat another 3+4. Mach Kick follow-up. If an opponent is stepping us after an initial keep out attempt, go for an immediate Mach Kick. 3+4 is meant to cover the horizontal space, while Mach Kick is meant to more cover the Z space, right? The 3D aspect of the game. Northern Cross follow-up. This is for opponents dashing in with fast high attacks. If your opponent does dash in with an immediate jab or a fast high attack after our first keep out attempt, they can actually stuff us out of 3+4 and or Mach Kick. Use Northern Cross in this situation to crush them. Mach Punch follow-up. Opponents who are dashing in with a fast mid, to counter this, an immediate dash into a generic down forward 1 mid, use Mach Punch. It even covers some situations where an opponent is going to throw out a fast advancing attack, like so. Law here with 3+4. And last but not least, Orbital Heal follow-up. If our opponent dashes at us with a fast low attack, use orbital heal to crush these lows and launch them for trying to disrespect our space. Oftentimes, orbital heal whiffed into orbital heal will catch opponents in their mid-dash animations. So as a quick recap, after using 3+4 Mach Punch on block at range 2, or whiffing an orbital heal at range 2 to 3, we want to continue to protect our space. How to optimally protect that space will really vary on what our opponent does. But we test for this by using 3+4 into 3+4 or Mach Punch into 3+4. Once we've identified their tendencies, we can then adjust our space control strategy accordingly. After all, remember the green box from before, from the previous video, this is our house. No one gets in for free. Space control tools against defensive opponents. Right, so now our opponent has usually at this point wised up. They are no longer running into our space control tools, they are being patient. They may even try to whiff punish us by waiting for one of our attacks to miss, or backdashing to create an opening, waiting for us to throw out another space control tool, and then bam, whiff punish, right? We deal with patient opponents and backdashers by simply forward dashing, so our attacks don't miss. And it might feel kind of scary to be chasing, and you might wonder, what if I get poked out? Well, we are afforded this luxury of forward dashing because we earned it by scaring our opponents into being patient and not pressing buttons after one of our keep out tools, right? And if our opponent isn't backdashing and is still just pressing buttons after our space control tool options, then go back to one of our keep out moves into keep out moves control game plan, right? Until they respect it. They don't respect 3+4 into 3+4, keep doing it. They don't respect 3+4 directly into Mach Punch, keep doing it until they respect you. Forward dashing into 3+4. Now, with a forward dash, we can catch up to our opponent's backdash, so a follow-up 3+4 won't whiff. The reason we want to chase down with a 3+4 is two parts. One, we want to reinforce to our opponents to respect our mid attacks, so they don't duck often. And two, we want to push them closer to the wall. 3+4 has very good range when it comes to actually just shoving our opponents back and back and back. Forward dash into Mach Punch, or you can think of it as a long dash Mach Punch. If our opponent sees us dashing in, our opponent may choose to backdash into advancing jab strings or even a hop kick. We can get poked out of our dash animation or even launched before our attacks even come out. If our opponent reacts to us dashing, then we should throw out something with a dash animation built in. Mach Punch has a built-in forward motion, so we can dash into an attack with a single move. Here we're intentionally telegraphing our dash to our opponents to bait out an attack, and then when they press a button, our Mach Punch will power crush them. Forward dash into Mach Kick, or a long dash Mach Kick. Our opponent also might wise up and start backdashing into a sidestep right, or a backdash into side walk right, Bryan's quote-unquote weak side, when we start forward dashing. If our opponent responds this way, Mach Kick will ensure they stop moving laterally. Since Mach Kick, like Mach Punch, starts up with a forward motion, it is incredibly hard to distinguish them between each other on startup. Forward dash Northern Cross. To cover opponents who backdash into high strings, or for whatever reason they might be crouch guarding, forward dash into Northern Cross will crush these high attack strings, as well as checking crouching opponents, or even in some cases, because Northern Cross you have to crouch, you will stop your momentum in the forward dash and evade some dick jabs. And the last situation is forward dashing into advancing orbital heal. The last situation to cover is opponents who perpetually backdash into something like a dick jab to stuff out our attacks. This can be annoying because it stuffs out 3+4, it stuffs out mock kick, and at the same time it evades mock punch. While we can northern cross that shit, it's much better to just simply launch it, right? So here we want to use the up forward version, the aggressive version of orbital heal to advance and protect more space. Space control to pressure. Alright, once our opponent is no longer pressing buttons on our keep out attack into a forward dash, it is time to pressure. Transitioning to this stage of the game will depend on how well you did in the previous keep out to keep out or space control to space control section. Since we've been using keep out into keep out this whole time, our opponent will continue to anticipate that. Instead, we're going to switch gears from space control into pressure. Forward dash into hatchet kick. Now that our opponent respects our forward dash and no longer wants to constantly either duck or press buttons when we run in, this is a good time to come in with a forward dash into hatchet kick. This is our main low attack for starting pressure, getting past stand blocking opponents, and making our opponent think twice about ducking. If we haven't reinforced enough dash into mid space control attacks, be assured that our opponent will likely low block or even low parry this. Make them fear the mid attacks so they can eat the lows. A lot of you are asking me like, oh, when I run up, my opponent just low parries this. That's because you haven't enforced enough mid attacks. Once you enforce enough mid attacks, you should be able to get these in for free. Forward dash into soccer kick. If we feel that our opponent is getting annoyed with hatchet kicks, like for instance, we've dashed, hatchet kick, we can try to go in for a soccer kick mix-up. If they duck, we get a launcher. If they block it, we're at -12. We might get punished, but usually at the lower ranks, this is not the case. Forward dash into back one. If our opponent respects our dash in, i.e. not pressing a button, and occasionally ducks, forward dash into back one is less risky option than soccer kick on block. If they duck our back one, we're at massive +7, forcing them into crouch. If they don't duck and stand block, we're at +3. Win-win either way. Forward dash into machine gun blow. Alright, since back one is particularly linear, our opponent may try to sidestep right. If this becomes a problem, forward dashing into machine gun blow will track to our weak side. Additionally, machine gun blow is just generally a good solid pressure attack, since the opponent will never know when we're stopping the string, as long as we vary up the timing. As a side note, you can also try to check sidestep right opponents with hatchet, since it tracks pretty well to Bryan's weak side. Forward dash into 1+2. If our opponent is sidestepping, and we're not exactly sure which way they're going to step, they maybe step left, maybe step right, go with 1+2. This is Bryan's fastest homing attack. On hit, it grants a substantial +6 frames and is safe on block. Forward dash into 1-2-1, 1-2-3, down forward to 1, down forward 2-3. If we want to apply our fastest pressure strings available, these 4 strings will do the trick. Because the attacks are fast, it is less likely that we get poked out of them. We will be using these strings also to test our opponent's patience, their reactions, and their knowledge. We should vary these up and not be too predictable with using them. Alright, forward dash into down back 3. Or forward dash into down 4. Sometimes a fast low poke damage is all we really need, and we don't have to commit to a slower or more punishable low attack like hatchet kick. Down back 3 and down 4 are quick chip lows that we can toss in here and there, but do be cautious. After down back 3 we are at -1 and recover in crouching, so our options are a bit limited there. Last but not least, forward dashing into throws. If our opponent is just stand blocking, all we really have at the beginner level is just hatchet kick to pressure, and this is not going to be too scary for them as it doesn't deal that much damage unless they're low on life. So hatchet kicks alone is not going to scare them, so we're going to have to incorporate throws, even though Bryan doesn't have the most intimidating throw game. I would say at the beginner and intermediate level, go ahead and just use these throws because honestly, a lot of people don't tech throws. It's kind of like free damage. Space control to pressure with no forward dashing. Alright, this is a bit odd since 3+4, Mach Punch, and Whiffed Orbital Heal leaves us too far to naturally apply pressure to our opponents. And you may wonder, how do we pressure opponents directly after space control if we're out of range and we don't forward dash? Well, we rely on them to come to us. At some point our opponent may run in after our space control tools and just block, entering our pressure range, which is range 1. I won't go too specific, but know that the game plan idea here is similar to the space control dash pressure. However, I will give 2 quick tips. Alright, always be cautious about opponents who run in and block, because they usually have one of 2 motives. They are waiting to block punish an attack of ours, or they're planning to mount their offense if our attack is not block punishable. The first time our opponent dashes in and blocks, we should test them by throwing out one of these fast strings. These attacks are fast enough that the opponent, if they attempt to dash in and block and attack, our attack will always put them into block stun first. And if they are just dashing into an attack, we'll stuff them. If our opponent is just dashing in and blocking without really pressing any buttons because they don't want to lose space or they don't want to get hit, then the whole toolbox of pressure moves and the scenarios I mentioned in the keep out moves, keep out, move, pressure apply here. Use the attacks that correspond to what your opponent does. Don't just flowchart it. Watch what they're doing and use the appropriate attacks. Alright, last topic. Last topic. Space control to counter hitting. Most of Bryan's space control tools are actually counter hit tools, and this often happens naturally. When the opponent is too eager and rushes in with buttons, on counter hit, 3+4 leads to a huge crumple stun, and Mach Kick, as well as Northern Cross, both lead to a post screw juggle on counter hit. However, if we do want to bait However, if we want to fish for or bait our opponent into getting counter hit with our space control tools, then we will have to change up the timing of our attacks. Instead of simply performing something like 3+4 into 3+4 immediately, or 3+4 into dash 3+4, we should aim for something like 3+4, move, then when our opponent thinks they're in the clear, bam, 3+4, or Mach Kick. This is definitely something that requires the player to develop a feel for not only the playstyle of the opponent, but their timing as well. And this is very difficult, something that I'm also struggling and currently working on. I will provide one quick tactic for counter hit baiting with forward 3. Immediately after 3+4, Mach Punch, or a whiffed orbital heal, we can stick out a forward 3. A majority of the time, against any opponent who is dashing in with an attack that is roughly 13 frames or slower will get counter hit. Now, I know I previously said that you can Mach Punch through these, but getting a forward 3 is significantly more damage, so this is an option. However, this should only be used if you have a read on your opponent. Like, you know they're going to rush in with a button, because the whiff recovery of forward 3 is not particularly good. Okay guys, thank you so much for sitting through this. I hope this at least made some sense. I spent a lot of time trying to organize my thoughts on this topic of space control, keep out, and how to build a game plan around it, because I truly think that Bryan thrives in the mid-range, and his mid-range, how well you control the mid-range is what really also dictates how he applies pressure, because you can't always just simply run into your opponent, because if you just run in, you might actually run into a hop kick, you might run into a down forward 2, you might run into, I don't know, a snake edge or something. So this, I feel like, is the backbone of where Bryan's game plan starts, from keep out. And from that, you can transition into having your opponent hopefully respect your attacks. If they don't respect it, then you continue to throw out counter hit and keep out tools, right? You throw out 3+4 into 3+4, Mach Punch into 3+4, or orbital into orbital until they respect it. And once they do, then you're able to gain some ground on them. Then you're able to use your space control tools, dash in, and then after you dashed in, then you're able to scare them some more, and that's when you can start landing hatchet kicks, start locking them down with down forward 1s, start trying to pressure with down forward 2s or jabs or 1-2-1. So I really spent a lot of time thinking about this and hope it makes sense to somebody out there. If you like the content, go ahead and leave me a comment, like, subscribe, you know the whole spiel. Man, I'm exhausted. It's 8 in the morning now. Anyways, I'm Peter, and have a good one. Thanks for checking this out. Peace.